My name is Kelly Staten, and I am the Programming Manager for the Johnson County Public Library. And welcome to Creating Positive Change in the Community through EDI. We're very excited to host this event, and it's part of the 2021 Spirit in Place Festival. And we want to give a big thanks to Franklin College for being our supportive partner for this event. So I'd like to introduce you to our facilitator for tonight's program. O. Prince is the founder and CEO of Coach O, LLC, an equity consultant, an educator, and a certified empowerment officer. Ms. Prince has more than a decade of experience and guides individuals and groups through thought-provoking conversations and professional training that is engaging, relatable, and conscious-driven. So thank you, O, for facilitating, and I'm going to turn it over to you.
All right, well, thank you all for having me. I really hope that this is thoughtful and engaging for you all. Again, I will say my government name. My name is Olena Prince. I go by O. And again, I am the CEO and founder of Coach O LLC. So with that being said, I would like to start off with an icebreaker, some ground rules, and then we'll introduce our panelists and then go into the questions. So again, I'm an educator, so I'm going to ask everybody to grab some pen and paper. And then give me a thumbs up when you all have it, so we'll know we're good to go. Let me scroll through, make sure everybody's good. Okay. Amazing. All right, so on this piece of paper, I want you all to, let's say, write your name 5 times. All right, then I have to go into teacher mode. When you're done, just look up.
Hey, O, when you say our name, are we talking about just our first name or our last name as well?
Whatever you're most comfortable with.
Okay, thanks.
Okay. All right. Now, breathe a little bit. And then the next thing I want you to do is switch hands and write your name 5 times. That will take a lot longer. I love seeing the facial expressions, so I apologize. And I'm a snorter, so if I snort, please do not judge me. See some people still working. No pressure, this will not be graded. Everybody good to go? Okay. So what was it like when you wrote your name the first time with your dominant hand? You all can put it in the chat or easy. Okay, familiar. All right, cool beans. You didn't have to think about it. Smooth and pretty. Okay, easy peasy, cool beans. Okay, so what was it like when I asked you to switch hands and do the same thing?
It was a struggle.
The struggle was real. Okay, I see a lot of struggles going in the chat. Took much longer. Okay, awkward, untidy. Stressful. Okay. All right. Well, thank you all for sharing. Yeah, I used to live at a high school, so I do like these types of activities. So bear with me, but it does have a purpose. I like to make my folks uncomfortable. And one of the easiest ways to make you uncomfortable is to tell you to do something that you do every single day and then switch it up on the fly. And so when I ask you all to write your names with your dominant hands, it's something that you do every day. It's something that you don't have to think about. Some may call it, you're doing it unconsciously. When I asked you to switch to your non-dominant hand, you had to think about it. It took a little bit longer. It could be awkward, especially if this was your first time. For those who ever had to break a hand and had to learn how to write with your non-dominant hand, you all are cheaters. No, I'm just kidding. But you also still had to take that time to practice. You had to take that time to be more aware. And you had to get out of that normalcy, that comfort zone. So I do this activity for my diversity talks because I'm going to ask you to do the same thing. I'm going to ask you to be uncomfortable. I'm going to ask you to be a little awkward and be okay with it. And it's just way easier to just tell you to write your name because you don't have to think about it. So thank you all for participating. And then that goes into our ground rules of we do ask that you please be respectful of each other's views and opinions. And just know that we are here to learn about ourselves, learn about each other, and learn about our community. Please do not dismiss or downplay someone else's experience just because it may not relate to yours. All viewpoints will be respected. I will say hate speech of any kind will not be tolerated. We are not here to change people's minds or viewpoints. I've tried it. It doesn't work. They always go back. I kid you not. This is intended to make you gain more awareness and understanding, though, of the community around you. And just to prove that it's okay not to be right. We're not here to tell you that you're not right. We're just here to gain understanding. So it's not about right and wrong. It's just about learning from each other. So without further ado, I would like to have our panelists introduce themselves. I'm not going to throw anybody under the bus. So whoever wants to take themselves off of mute first, we can do that.
I guess I can jump in. Fast on the draw there. Hi, Teresa Voorhees. I am a clinical social worker at Johnson Memorial Hospital, which is actually Johnson Memorial Health. And I live in Bargersville. I have a license. I'm a licensed clinical social worker, and I'm also an advanced palliative and hospice social worker as well. And my background's been in mental health therapy with teens and families, and I've loved that too. I love being a social worker on the case management team at Johnson Memorial. It's been a rewarding experience for almost 7 years for me. And then in my background too, I've taught social work at University of Indianapolis. Sorry, Franklin. But UND, and so taught anything from foundations to research. Research was kind of my gig. I loved it. They hated it. I loved it. So I've been in Johnson County for 20 some years, a long time. I'm involved with the St. Thomas Clinic, and that's basically me.
Thank you. Don't be shy with family.
Well, my name's Karen Altergott Roberts, and I'm currently living in Kokomo, but I'm about ready to move to Johnson County. So I will see you there, Teresa. I spent half of my adult life as an academic. I'm a sociologist and gerontologist by training. And I spent the other half of my life as a United Methodist pastor. And now I am retired and really enjoying this. So that's who I am.
Good evening, everybody. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Hello. So my name is Dr. Maegan Pollonais, and If you detect an accent, that is because there is one. And I am from the beautiful Twin Island Republic of Trinidad and Tobago in the Caribbean. I am currently the director for the Center for Diversity and Inclusion here at Franklin College. Very happy to be here. Karen, you said a lot about who you are by training. It would be remiss of me to not share that I'm an opera singer by training. My doctorate is in music. I've studied several languages. You know, a lot of times people ask, how do you bridge the gap? Like, you work with diversity, but you sing opera. Well, my specialty is about multicultural music, multiculturalism in general, and how we can use multiculturalism, especially multicultural music, to bridge gaps between students of color and their white counterparts, and taking them from, you know, music that they love and know to some things that they don't know. So that's how I bridge the gap. My concentration is educational psychology with a certificate in gifted and talented education. I've started at Franklin quite recently in June. I can't believe the time is flying by so fast, but it has been a great pleasure learning the community, learning you know, about our students and what has been, or what is now, and all the great fun I'll have creating a future. So happy to be here to meet all of you. And I'd also like to introduce my partner in crime in this evening, Hannah. Take it away.
Hi, everyone. I am the Reverend Dr. Hannah Adams Ingram. I am the Director of Religious Life and Chaplain at Franklin College. I'm an ordained minister in the United Church of Christ. I grew up in Johnson County. I was born in Franklin, raised in Nineveh, Indian Creek, graduate. And then I went to college and grad school in Atlanta and in Denver, and came back to work at Franklin College. It's a joy to return to this community that formed me and try to give back and work towards a future together. And what I've studied and worked on my whole career has been kind of the intersection between religion and psychology and education. And I've always described it as, I love finding out what and why people believe what they do, and then how that causes them to act. So all of those things, education, psychology, and religion, all are about why we do what we do. So it's great to be here, and I can't wait to talk to you all.
All right, and then we'll have Kimberly.
Hello, everyone. I'm Dr. Kimberly Pfeiffer. I am the Assistant Superintendent at Clark Pleasant Community Schools. And my background began as a first bachelor's degree in public relations and advertising, and then received another bachelor's degree in education. I was a middle school teacher for about 6 years, finished a master's in administration, and was an administrator of both elementary and middle school for 14 years. Finished my doctorate, have been an assistant superintendent in 2 different school districts. First was at Greater Clark County Schools, which we were very fortunate to have 3 high schools in our district. One was urban, one was rural, and the other was even what I would say remote in New Washington. So having all 3 of those communities provided us a very diverse population by which to work with. Recently, in the last 3 years, have joined the team at Clark Pleasant, and have had the wonderful opportunity this past year, after a couple of years of work with a DEI committee for our district, to hire Ruby Butler, that is here on our call tonight, to be our DEI coordinator. And she and I have been just really loving the work that we've done together this particular year at Clark Pleasant. One particular note I will make, I have consulted as a private practice on the side for about 17 years, most of which was in strategic planning for boards and schools. But in the last maybe 10, I've done work with PBIS, positive behavior interventions and support. Like I said, consulting for school districts that want to put that particular framework in place. And a large component of that is being able to have systems by which you gather data and analyze it with your school teams, and then decide what disproportionality might be there, and then how to put plans in place to right those missteps that maybe teams or schools have accomplished. So really, we are doing heavy work in that at Clark Pleasant, and as we go into questions, I'm sure you'll hear a little bit about that, but our work with DEI fits so perfectly well with the positive behavior intervention and support framework.
Well, thank you all. And I will start off with the first question of, it's actually 3. How do you define diversity? How do you define equity? And how do you define inclusion?
Okay, I could start. So I work a lot with our students, and so forgive me if my examples are a little bit on the fun, simpler side, but I often find that, you want to make people understand just the basics of it so that they can understand bigger definitions, right? So for me, diversity is. We are diverse by nature. So when people talk about, having to create diversity, we are diverse by nature. You can be in a room full of white people and there will be diversity. We have Polish Americans, we have Irish Americans, we have women, we have men. We are diverse by nature. The thing about it is we want to be intentionally diverse and creating more diversity, right? So that we have those representations of the multitude of ways that people are different in those spaces. So that intentionality is usually where you think about the definition of diversity, right? So diversity is about difference. It is about what makes you unique. It's what makes you similar. There are many different varies and definitions of diversity, but I want us to think very broadly, because a lot of times when you hear about diversity, you only think about racial and ethnic minorities, and there's so much more to diversity than that. For inclusion, I often like to tell my students, diversity is everybody coming to the party, but inclusion is being asked to dance, right? So making sure that in whatever stance you are, wherever you interact, however you're interacting with people, your interests are being met, your interests are being taken into consideration. Are you playing the kind of music that I like? You're including me in your plans, right? So something as simple as being invited to the party, but also being asked to dance, right? And so equity, when we think about that, equity is making sure that, using the same frame of reference with the dance, making sure that everybody has an opportunity to dance, right? Is there a dance floor? Are there opportunities that, if people who don't necessarily want to physically dance, are there opportunities for them to boogie in their seats, right? Looking at the person individually and looking at how we can make things work so that they all experience the same sort of wonder, the same sort of opportunities, but specifically for them. A lot of our students think equity and equality, and it's not the same thing, right? We're all in the same party, we're all here, but are we specifically thinking about what you need or what kind of music you want? Or is there a space for you, right? Looking at it individually and looking at how we can best serve the needs of each person. So that's just a basic definition of how we use things. But of course, there are more beautiful and more eloquent ways of saying it. So I open up the floor to my colleagues as well.
Thank you.
I can add to that. I would like to share, and I want to give Ruby Butler, that's here on our call, credit for this one, as she begins to work with all staff at Clark Pleasant. She has used some hand gestures that help our staff remember those same things. And the first thing she does is kind of do the jazz hands like this, and that knowing that these are all called fingers, none of them are exactly the same. So this represents diversity. And so just knowing that we need to make sure that we remember that there are all different types, shapes, sizes, colors, interest when we look at diversity. At Clark Pleasant, we use the words respect, responsibility, and safety, which is considered our warrior way. And we connect diversity to respect, because we need to respect everyone and their diverse being that they are and what they bring to the table, no matter what that is. So we do that. And then we look at equity. She does this hand piece right here, this gesture for equity. And we've used a lot of analogies for that one to help people remember that. But the one that resonates with me most, I played college sports, so I loved the picture that I'm sure all of you have seen with the kids trying to see the ball game. And so just remembering the fact that, the students in that picture are all different heights, but the fence is the same height. And knowing that in order for us to have everyone have equal ability or equal height to look over the fence, the stools or the, I would say a stool that they're given is all different heights. So the tallest person clearly may not need any additional supports, but the shortest person trying to look over the fence needs a taller stool than the one in the middle. So in other words, that what we provide people may be different, but it may raise them to be able to do the same task, which in this situation in that picture is looking over the fence. And then last but not least, she has us give ourselves a great big hug, so that the inclusion piece, making sure that everyone feels included in that hug, and that they feel like they have a seat at the table, and they don't feel excluded, but yet they feel included in whatever is being offered at that table, whether it be education, whether it would be social time, or anything like that within our school community. And that, of course, is, I didn't connect, but the responsibility is the equity part, because it is not only a student's responsibility to help us know what they need, but it's our staff's responsibility to know what equity needs to take place for kids to be able to feel equal. And then last, that safety is our inclusion, which means that a child will not feel safe in our climate and culture unless they do feel included and welcome at our table.
Thank you.
Wow, those are amazing. And you took my fence one because I love the fence one. But yeah, diversity is really, it's just a central tenet to social work. It's all about, we're taught to be culturally competent. Part of our code of ethics is all about valuing the dignity and value of every single person, allowing people to self-determine for themselves. And to me, that's all a part of diversity, because from a hospital medical point of view, you know, diversity is not just cultures, religions, gender, and all that, you know, and, you know, because it's varied, but each person has their own diversity. And it doesn't matter if this, you have this patient that has COPD and you go to the next room and they have COPD, you know, it doesn't matter. They're not the same. It's just like in therapy, when I have a patient come in that has, you know, depression, their depression, how they're managing it and what's all behind all that is totally different from the next person. Everybody is so different, and you have to approach and you have to look at the value and the dignity of each person. That to me is what diversity is all about. And you know, when it talks about the equity, I love the fence one. Everybody has to have a different foundation. You know, we may, in the healthcare profession, you know, the biggest problem we run into is health insurance, or, you know, people being able to pay for healthcare. And you think about if everybody just had this, you know, I'm going to give everybody $1,000 for healthcare every year. Well, for me, I don't have any health issues pretty much. You know, I have some arthritis. Yeah, no big deal. You know, I can manage that with some Tylenol. That's going to cost me what, $5 at the store. So my $1,000 is going to go really long. But someone else who has, you know, maybe diabetes that they inherited from their family, and they have, you know, high blood pressure, and they have other things, their foundation, they need more foundation. And so to make it equitable for them to access what they need, access opportunities is what I always think is important with equity. And inclusion, to me, I love the party thing. That's great. I'm gonna have to remember that one. But to me, it's all, everybody has a seat at the table. It doesn't matter where you sit, you all are important. And there's, you know, just knowing as a social worker that every single person has to feel valued and included, that their voice matters. You have to listen to their voice for it to matter. And sometimes that's the one thing about inclusion that gets left out, is we don't listen to voices. I know when I was teaching research, I would always say, when you're looking at a research study, ask yourself who's missing, because that will determine how good that research study is, you know, and also who's paying for it. Pay attention to that. But just the inclusion, you know, just everybody should have a voice. I just feel like as a social worker, that's something that's really important to me, and listening to the voice.
Thank you.
I don't have anything new to add to the great things that other panelists said. one thing I would amplify and highlight would be, I appreciated that Dr. Pollonais said that diversity just is, like, and Teresa said that as well. Like, we are diverse, our communities are diverse, but to me, equity and inclusion will take effort. So I never use those words unless I'm willing to do something about it. Like, that it is an active word rather than, and I think that's important for us in this work, that sometimes these words become buzzwords or trendy, that like they just get grouped together. But I would never let equity and inclusion get grouped if we're not doing something. Like, it is like Teresa, you just said, who's not at the table? Like, it's that extra effort of, if you're at the party, it's hard to make sure everyone can dance, Maegan. Like, like, what are we gonna do if like not everyone can get to the floor? And what if my knee hurts? Like, and what if like all these what ifs? That's a hard party to plan. And so I just want to amplify that. To me, those words, they're extra work in a good way, but it's there.
Absolutely. All right. And so to that point, what are some ways that you all have advocated for change at your institutions? And what are some of those successes, and what are some of those challenges that you all have ran into? Let's start with Teresa this time.
Yeah, you're just going to need to tell us to go. We're too,
Yep.
I mean, we're too polite.
No, we're fine. We're good now.
Well, it's been great because as a social worker, that's what we do, is advocate. And so I have felt I felt that it's been very easy for me to advocate at the hospital. I came into a wonderful case management team that was already doing that. Case management team that I work on has RNs and social workers, and we work together in tandem and listen to each other, and it's phenomenal. I think when I came into it, I noticed there was just a lack of, we had resources, but we didn't have things that we could really help with people. And to me, one of the biggest problems with the DEI, with those issues, is that the biggest thing is why we don't have inclusion and equity is because people don't know where the resources are. And so that was a big push for me. So, I had this big, huge list I brought in, and we continue to add to it all the time for resources for folks. And one of the biggest ones is mental health. Having a list and talking to people about mental health, what's available, what they can do out there, and also substance issues. So as a team, we really advocated for providing resources. And so we're constantly working on, updating everything, just to help, help people to know where to go, which is the biggest thing. I have people living in Johnson County that didn't even know there was Access Gateway. They did, and they've lived in Johnson County their whole life. And I'm like, so surprised. Or seniors that didn't know that there's senior transportation through the senior center, so, when you talk about that. So, and also part of that is trying to making sure we're covering our bases and that everybody's at the table, that we are covering not just resources for, mental health, but resources for the elderly, resources for kids, resources for this and that, which is, and homelessness and things like that. So that's always an issue. I think one thing that we've done in providing the resources, one of the challenges with advocating with the resources to make what we do at the hospital more inclusive and more equitable for folks, is there aren't resources. And one of the biggest challenges we have is we don't have any type of homeless shelter. And that is a population in Johnson County that is being left out. And we're fortunate that we network with the folks in Marion County or around us, to do that. But as a hospital, that's been a real big challenge for us, and as our team, because our goal is to provide competent care when someone's getting ready to leave. We make sure they have transportation. I mean, you have to think about all these things when you're looking at DEI. You have to think about, how are they going to get home? Some people don't have someone to pick them up. I mean, people come that don't have anybody to help them. So you have to, you have to think about all these little details. And that to me is what's so important about diversity, equity, and inclusion is thinking about the details. What does that person need, compared to the other, patients, and that's been good. So it's been a good thing we've advocated and done that, and also advocating against the stigma of mental illness and substance issues. Ooh, it's really hard when you have someone come in the hospital and there's an overdose, or if they've come because they've had too much alcohol and they're withdrawing, and you have to educate the staff. You have to remind them the humanity. You have to remind them this is, and not that they don't do a good job of that. They care for them 100%, doesn't matter what, but sometimes you just have to, and they're like, yeah, well, whatever, but you have to go, no, let's really look, what can we do this time specifically for that person? Let's look at this person as an individual and not who they've maybe been before. And so those are some things that we've worked with the staff to just try to bring them along, educate them, remind them. And that's the great thing that I like about Johnson Memorial, is that we have multidisciplinary teams every day at 11:30. So we come together as a hospitalist, the pharmacist, the PTOT people, the charge nurse. We come together and we have a good holistic approach with the person, which hopefully does kind of address the issues of diversity, inclusion, and equity with that person. So, yeah.
Okay.
I can follow that from the view from a public school. So obviously advocation, we are advocating for students, because that's why we're all employed at Clark Pleasant, as all public schools are, is to advocate for our students. Not that we necessarily need laws for us to advocate for our students, but I kind of tie things back to ESSA, which is our Every Student Succeeds Act, which came right after No Child Left Behind, and leads our charge on all things education. But one particular, when you were talking about the details, Teresa, the details that they charge us with, which PBIS and that framework helps us, is to really attend to our subgroups and know who our subgroups are within race, religion, gender, socioeconomic status, etc., as those are listed. But even further than that, the state of Indiana has a code that charges us to make sure that we have culturally responsive classrooms. And so one of our largest pieces of work is helping our teachers understand, what does a culturally responsive classroom look like? So what really is the operational definition? And then what skill sets do you need to have to make sure that that's the environment that you're creating for students that are in your class? So those are a couple of pieces that I just kind of took note of. Challenges that we have. I think right now, the largest challenge that we're facing would be some parent groups that are out there with misinformation about the fact that creating culturally responsive classrooms means that we may be teaching critical race theory, which we are not, or that we might be teaching social emotional learning, which is a bad thing. So I would say the misinformation about critical race theory and social emotional learning is actually what is our biggest challenge right now. It's not going to change the work we do, but it's definitely a challenge, because it causes our employees, as we're advocating for students, to just feel on edge, and like it's hard for them to even respond without thinking that they're saying the wrong thing. So it's not going to change our work. It just makes it a little bit more sticky sometimes.
Thank you.
I am thinking both, not only of my institution, but my particular work as a chaplain, and just like a minister in the community. And I think that I go back to the ways to advocate for change is always paying attention to who's not at that table and then raising that. So like sometimes we think that advocacy is only the big things. But every time that we have to be in touch with the question of how could this be better, or how could this be more inclusive, and how can I say that? How can I ask who's not here? So who's not on this panel? Who's not in this room? but then that does have other steps that are involved in making that change. So traditionally, it's really easy for DEI advocates or people in that work to be underpaid or under recognized or anything like that. So it's easy to use, for example, at a nonprofit institution like mine, we have volunteers all of the time, and we have all sorts of different opportunities for people to be in leadership or in speaking roles, or we just have so many ways to involve the community. So it's asking questions about to what scale are we raising concerns about diversity, equity, and inclusion? Like, is it just the smaller events that might be out of some of our smaller offices, or it's the institution-wide things? Is it some of my colleagues in the community that work with the college? Like, are we making sure that we're not just having people come in for volunteer opportunities, but when there's actual opportunities for fair compensation, thinking through all those complicated things about how do we invest in this work with even the small amount of resources we have, and the acknowledgement of the work it takes, and connecting people to other opportunities, and really highlighting the work that people are already doing in our community, so that it's not just a small pockets of these things being done for volunteer and only in a volunteer capacity that's not sustainable. So like, how do you ask big questions of budgets and of practices and policies? And a lot of that for me happens in one-on-one small conversations as a pastor, like, that are not public. Like, that's individual heart level work. There are other ways to do it. We all play our role, but that would be one of the unique things I think of my role, is having these conversations with lots of different people in different areas that will contribute differently. And that would be the goal, is that we could build something together. I would add that a challenge is that so many people have different priorities for the work we do, right? And so if someone feels like this being a priority is at a cost to their priority, rather than getting the vision that, like, this makes us all better, that this is work that makes the whole thing sustainable. Like, higher ed doesn't survive if we don't figure out how to include people well and justly and all of this kind of stuff. Like, I feel like we're on cultural shifts that, like, we got to figure out a way forward, not just as higher ed, but as a community, like, that we want a better world. If we don't figure out how to do those things together, that it's not a threat, it is actually a hope. Like, there's a better side to this. That's a challenge if people feel scared or nervous or fearful that, like, what this kind of work is a direct threat to them. So you hear some of that themes in the public schools as well, that this is a threat, that my way of life will be at threat if we do this. And that is more heart level work that I think religion can help with, but not for everyone, but is something I'm interested in.
Absolutely. Thank you.
I'm just going to keep my answer really short, but oh my gosh, Hannah, I would love to say so much in response of all the richness that you just dropped on us. But okay, so the ways that we advocate at our institution, we're more intentional with things. So intentionality, like Hannah said, it takes work, it takes effort. It's not just, oh, we're diverse and they will come. It's like, okay, we are having diverse students. Are we ready? Are we ready for diverse students? Are we ready for diverse people and their challenges? So we have to be intentional with what we're doing. So for example, I know at Franklin, we have hired a an assistant director for multicultural recruitment. Long gone are the days of just, a recruiter going out. Like, you have to know your students, right? You have to know what are some of their challenges, because yes, we're there for our students, but we're also creating the future. Like, these people are going to be the people who are making our laws, who are interacting, who are teaching our future children. It's so important that we give them the best experiences that life can offer. So knowing who they are, knowing what their challenges are, and how you can meet them is so important. So we created a role for that person to recruit those students so that they know, when you come here, we got you, okay? We are going to be able to take care of you. So that was a role that was created. Another role that was created was a student success coordinator for diverse students, right? People are coming from different backgrounds, different educational experiences. You don't know if they were able to just, pass classes because they were able to do the bare minimum, and then they're not ready for college. So having somebody who's specifically there to be like, listen, we understand that there are these challenges, but we're going to meet you. We're going to meet you. We're going to make sure that you're ready, because we have an ethical duty. We brought you in and we want to see you persist and graduate. So we're going to create an opportunity for that to happen. So those are like two of the, I would say, very forward-facing initiatives. There's so much more, because this work, again, is so, I don't even know what the word to use. Like, it's in every aspect of what we do, right? Because people are people. So you can't just, say, oh, you're a student today. No, you're a person. So we see you in the dining halls. We see you in the residence halls. We see you in class. We see you walking down the street. It's entrenched in everything. So I'm just going to mention those two initiatives. I would say some of the challenges just in general, making people buy into it. It's so difficult when you have lived your life, and I'm speaking not only as a minority, but also as an international person, right? So imposter syndrome is real. You don't necessarily think that this was built for you, right? Higher education is not built for me. I don't see people that look like me in classrooms, so why would I buy into the idea that it is successful if I don't even see people who look like me, right? So just having them understand that, yes, we're ready for you, you can do this. That belief is a challenge. So not only are we taking on calculus, chemistry, biology, social sciences, all of these things, just that belief in themselves is that extra work sometimes that is a challenge. And that's for our minority students. Now taking on majority students, sometimes they also don't even think that, this doesn't concern me, I'm not diverse, so you do what you do in the multicultural center and I'll do what I do. When it's all of our responsibility, right? We have to notice who's not at this dance. We have to notice who can't see over that fence, right? It's all of our work. And so those are some of the challenges, not even talking about resources or, initiatives, just the belief that it's important sometimes is a challenge, right? So I'm going to stop there and we can move on to the next question, but it's a lot of work, but it's worth it.
Yes, thank you for that. And you actually did a perfect segue into our next question, which then goes into what goals did you all have to put in place at your institutions in order to make that positive change? So I was like, Meg, I don't know if you got anything else you want to add, or
I'll just jump in really quickly. Okay. So for me, and I'm a musician, right? So I just say this, that I'm very passionate and I'm not the most eloquent person in terms of how I speak, but it comes from the heart. And so for me, when people ask me about goals, it's never for me this beautifully well stated. In my mind, goals are, I want to see a world where our students know that they can be anything. I mean, taking a Black woman from Trinidad and Tobago and saying you could sing for the Metropolitan Opera, you can sing in Russian. That to me is something that could never have happened had it not been for people who saw opportunities in me and created spaces so that I can thrive. So I want to see a world where that happens for everybody, regardless of where you come from, what your physical standing might be, what's your sexual orientation, what are some of the different limitations you have. This can happen. And so that's a very flowery way of saying those are my goals ultimately. But I would think that when we were putting it down on paper, we were like, okay, let's do some things more digestible, right? Okay, we want to see an increase in students. diversity on our campus. So we're intentionally going to these different schools. Again, that person who was hired for that role, he's working on that. And it's a testimony that this year at Franklin College, we have the largest and most diverse class that we've had in history. So we're seeing the benefits of that intentionality, right? A second goal was that we want to have more diverse people. Well, on our staff side, we have the most diverse staff we've ever had in recent history. We're still struggling with faculty and with the faculty side, but I'm literally just came back to Franklin today from a conference about how to recruit diverse people. So we're doing the work. We're trying to really be intentional with how much it's important to us. Again, I wish I had a better like bullet points of goals, but my vision is that you will see it. People are like, how is it going to work? You're going to know it's working because you're going to see it. You're going to see these students thriving. You're going to see these students staying. You're going to see that people have a buy-in to making this community better. I'm going to end there. Open the floor to others.
All right, Kimberly, what do you have?
Well, having a background in strategic planning, we do have something very specific. And I think Ruby kind of knows all the time. She's like, I got to get rid of those random arrows because Kimberly's going to say something about it. But our vision for this year is just to make sure that we are creating that better understanding and awareness of every single employee that works for Clark Pleasant on how we create culturally responsive spaces. And when I say spaces, that might mean the bus or the cafeteria or a classroom, the whole school building. It could even be the gym, you know, our coaches, those that work in athletics, but making sure that we raise that awareness, obviously through perception surveys, so that, you know, we'll know if the staff feels like they have more awareness and understanding of creating and the strategies by which they can use to create those spaces at the end of the year when we're done with our particular pieces that we're working toward. So to do that, first of all, it's just that first question we asked tonight, making sure that all of our staff members do understand the words diversity, equity, and inclusion, because one might think that just saying that word has the same meaning to everyone, and it does not, in case you're wondering. We've learned that quickly. So not only to create that, but we have worked to try to make sure that everyone that is employed with our school district kind of has an elevator speech. I know that sounds kind of cliche, but anyone in our district could be at a ball game, they could be at Walmart, they could be at church, and ask, oh my gosh, I read in the newspaper, you guys hired a DEI coordinator. What's that all about? And we want to make sure that our message is clear. And so we have very strategically put 4 bullet points in place, and we will have arrived when 100% of our staff can follow those 4 bullet points and be able to answer that question to anyone and everyone. So that's really creating a foundation for our work with DEI, as opposed to doing what I tell Ruby is random acts of improvement or random acts of DEI, because lots of people do that in school improvement. They grab the flavor, go to the conference and get this and think that random things is going to make everything better, but you really have to build that foundation. So our elevator speech is very succinct. First of all, it creates the larger why, which is what we are charged to do as educators. And that belongs around the federal guidance and that we're given, and then also the state of creating those responsive spaces. Secondly is the definition of D, E, and I. And the third bullet is how we marry those with our respect, responsibility, and safety. And then they get to end with the personal why of why that's important to them. So large why, definition, how it marries, and then the personal why. So those are our specific pieces on our goals this year and how we're going to accomplish that.
Absolutely. All right, Teresa.
Well, I work in the case management team, so I don't work in the broader hospital. So I had a really good conversation though with our HR director, Judy Ware. So it was wonderful because I got to find some things that I wanted to know anyway. But I found out that we do have specific goals. What we do is we look at the community. What's the community made up? And I did a little bit of research because I'm a researcher. And I found out that, we have about 90% of our population in Johnson County is white, non-Hispanic. 3.13 is Asian. 2.38 is Black, African American, and then 2.07 is white and Hispanic. And so they grab that information and they base it upon, let's look at what's going on at Johnson Memorial. What patients are we seeing? What demographics are they from? And also, what's our staff look like? And so that's something that they do. And so they look through all of these types of data. Data is so important. And then what they do is they get with a consultant, and based upon that, they plan on what we need to do. I know when they were going into this year, one of the things that kind of came up at the last minute really for a goal was we had the Afghan refugees in Atterbury. And some of these, and they need medical help, obviously. So we had some of the women who were expecting babies. And so we were like, how can we take care of these moms who can't speak English and it's all that. We had a lovely one of our doctors in our network. He said, I speak Farsi if you need me to help. And that's the kind of thing I've seen. And I've noticed that's kind of the goal is to think about how can we bring more diverse people in, because even though we're mostly almost, a white, non-Hispanic county, let's change that. Let's make it to where Johnson Memorial and in the Johnson County area is has these things in place, like what Maegan was talking about, so that people can come in and feel like they can make a home. Because one of the big things is we're an affirmative, action. We believe in a diverse group of folks to hire, and to do that, we go out to different advertising places. We advertise at all different places because we want to bring all kinds of people in. And on our website, they had a really good thing about, we want you to come here, and these are some of the benefits of living in Johnson County. And hopefully one of those benefits is that if you're coming to our county and you're of this, this is your faith belief, this is what we have for you. Or if you have this health issue, we have that person to take care of that for you in your community. And so that's really important. So the goals that they do are based upon what they see in the community and how can we meet the needs of the community. And that includes not only just, culture and religion and gender and all that stuff, but how many young people do we have? Elderly people do we have? Because they have all different needs. The needs of elderly are so much different than the needs of kids, and so those are things that they look at when they do goals. And I know as part of our case management team, we look at how can we give the best continuity of care to our patients. And so we do plan goals every year. And a lot of it is, are we doing this? Are we making sure that they understand what advanced directives are? So those are the goals that we're doing. And it may not seem under the DEI, but when you're meeting the needs of the people that you're serving, that's DEI. I mean, you're including all their needs and you're going, hey, we can help you with this. So yeah, that's what they do with goals. It's good. It's good.
And then that would also bring us to our next question as well. And then Hannah, I'll get started with you on this one, if possible. How do you all get buy-in from your institutions and your teams and the individuals that you work with every day?
That's a big question. And now that I have to start. Well, I think I'll take the Maegan approach since I'm starting and go with the big visionary fluffy part. And then maybe you all can have the strategic, how do you actually do this? I think that some of it is connecting to people's values and stories that they already have. We know what it's like to be included, and we all know what it's like to be excluded. We know what it's like to have have safety, and we know what it's like to not feel safe, even if that perception of safety or danger varies from different people. Like, we've experienced it differently. So to connect to people's experience, and then try to build empathy out of that, that if we can connect to people's lived experience, and we know that most people mean well, even when we disagree on a lot of things. Most people love some other people in their life and want good things for those people. So if we know that about humankind, that for the most part, they love their people and want good for them. Okay, so how do we define what's good for them? How do we define who your people are? Can we expand that a little bit? So that's one of my favorite things about religion. Most of our big religions expand what it means to be in the in-group. So it's not just you're protecting your own people, but love thy neighbor as yourself. Like, it's this expansive, that there's a golden rule in a lot of the religions that says, okay, you got to get bigger. You got to do more. You can't just do this. So to me, there's power in the stories we tell about who we are, who we care about. Some of those stories are religious stories for those that matters to. So I'm a Christian minister, so my faith stories matter to me to help push me out. I've got Jesus nagging me in my head, saying that my family is not just my brother and sister, but it's these other people, and feeding a whole crowd, even if they didn't bring food, I have to share my food, like all of these things that are just like in there. So those stories matter to us. But even just values. So if your value is that people do deserve to be safe in their schools and in their homes, and loved well or cared for well in a hospital, okay, then we've got to work towards what that's going to look like. Like, if we can agree on some of these things, that people do deserve safety, well-being. I would hope we get as far as people deserve to flourish, not just bare necessities, but if we can keep building out, what is it going to take? If your values are this, how do we match that in a broader community? And it takes a lot of relationship building to even have those conversations. I have to talk to other people. I have to build my capacity to talk to people who are not the same as me. I was thinking about, even with the goals question, even on an individual level, what are my goals? Some of that is making sure that not all the books I read are by people that look and think like me. So like, it has to be like these little things that are building our capacity to care for other people. I will stop there.
And then I would like to hear from one more, just for the sake of time. And if not, we can move on. All right, well, so next question then for us would be, how have you all incorporated the surrounding communities into your DEI effort? Or to that point, how would you like for the surrounding communities to support you in your DEI efforts? We'll start with Kimberly.
Well, first of all, it's important for there to be a community and a network by which to enrich both Ruby and myself and our team leading our district. So we have a couple of opportunities with the CIESC, which is our Service Center for Education supports in Central Indiana, to be able to have a network built there, so that we can meet once a month to be able to toss around ideas and share successes and things that we can do in order to support this endeavor, receive research pieces and things like that to support our work. And then also, Ruby belongs to a group that also would have DEI coordinators within their school districts here in Central Indiana, and that also helps support her. So when we talk about building that community out, it's just that community of leaders being able to work together in order to build that collective understanding throughout our areas. As far as the work we've done with our community, we just finished a community, and we called it Parent Series at the time. We're more knowledgeable now that we have looked at a language style guide and think we should refer to that as families, not parents, to be more inclusive. So we're changing that name, but in the fall, it was our parent, family, and community night. And we invited them in once a month on a Monday and allowed them to understand more about diversity, equity, and inclusion. And again, the same types of goals, understanding what those words mean, how they relate to respect, responsibility, and safety, which is our Warrior Way, and then what those applications look like for our staff to our students during our community circles and things like that as we create those classrooms. So really, those are the things we've done, things to help further the network with our leadership, and then also that opportunity with that series, so that parents can come and hear anything and everything that they want to hear about how we're working to create those classrooms within our spaces.
Thank you. Teresa, would you like to add anything?
Yeah, I don't know if you all are familiar with Dr. David Dunkel. He's our CEO, and he has made some really big changes in the last few years to be more patient-centered and staff respect-centered, and it's been really wonderful. But he's been putting out, YouTube videos and things like that to encourage people with vaccines. I know that's a big thing we've done. One of our biggest community partners that we have is St. Thomas Clinic, and that's been a partner we've had forever. St. Thomas Clinic sends their patients to Johnson Memorial to get x-rays, blood work, and these things are covered. And I think that's huge. And I think another big, huge thing that JMH does for the community is they continue to strive to get people in. I mean, they want to make sure that we have people here that are competent medical staff so that everybody has an opportunity, because, you can go to, you can drive up to Greenwood or, the other hospitals and things like that. But some people, it's just nice to be hometown. And so I think he's really trying to do that. We have great volunteers, which, they go out in the community and bring the community in, which is great. But I know they just try to do a lot of those things. So the community, we really try to make it more open, come in and, see us and also we get out in the community. I mean, we're at the fair. Like I said, we had the clinic, for the vaccines and testing and things like that. I mean, just trying to meet the needs immediately. There's a lot of things I could talk about, but one of the things I love the most is St. Thomas Clinic, but they also have the foundation. I mean, if you need financial assistance, if you don't have insurance, ClaimAid's at your room to help you out. And that's another community partner that we have. There's just other people that we work with. I can't name them all. They're so many, but, and that's really good. I would like the community to be open to diversity more and inclusion and equity. I find that as a social worker, I struggle sometimes as a social worker when I'm with people and patients, and we've had, an incident, from someone that didn't want to go to one of the internists because of or some doctor, I can't remember what it was, because of how they looked in their culture. And it was like, really, and then, I just think the community, we just have to, like Maegan and Hannah have talked about, and Kimberly, we just have to start being more open, that everybody should be welcome at the table. And that's everybody. I don't care if they're an alcoholic. I don't care if their skin color is different. I don't care if they, their faith traditions are different. I don't care if they're 90. I don't care if they're 1 year old. I don't care if they're a crazy, loving, conduct disorder teenager, which are some of my favorites. We all have to we're all at the table together. And I know that, JMH isn't perfect, but boy, JMH is striving. And I know my team is striving. And that's why I love my team, is because they really do value the dignity and worth of every person that walks through our door and comes into our hospital.
Absolutely.
Sorry, I know you want to move on to the next question, but I just really want to quickly say, echo what you say, Teresa, about the community, because all of these questions about us wanting to reach out and partner with the community has to be ready.
Yes.
The community has to be ready, because I just moved here, so I'm still really learning the community, but I have students who say they don't feel comfortable going out into Johnson County because of the stairs or because people follow them. And these are things that are true and that they're happening. And so as much as we want to make these outreach and have all these things, the community, there's a level of education that still needs to happen. And that big why that Hannah was speaking about, like, why is this important that everybody is, at the table or asking those questions or having the lens to notice when somebody else is not there? Those things still need to happen before we're able to just go out there and, hug each other and include each other. It has to be safe for everybody. And so that's a huge part I just wanted to say.
Absolutely. And it goes perfectly into the next question as well. So thank you for that. And the next question is, so what advice would you give to those who are looking to be involved? I know that's typically the question of when DEI comes up, like, so what can I do? How can I help? What difference can I make? So what question or what advice would you give to those who are looking and wanting to be involved in this work? I'll go with Teresa first.
Well, to me, again, and going back, because this is my perspective of social work, to me, it is your neighbor. It's that one-to-one contact with that person. As a gay woman who's married to a lovely wife, the more we have found out that people get to know us, then if they have a prejudice against gays and lesbians and things, the more they get to know you, the better. Then they're like, oh, well, they're just normal people. And it's like, yeah, we're normal people, and so I think it starts small. The advice I would give is start small. Get to know your neighbors, get to know people in your community, because if you can connect to them, and then if they see you, and then model, I always told my students is model the behavior you want to see in other people. If you're clients always late, or there's always a problem, model the behavior with them by always being on time and doing things. I was very intentional when I was teaching, that I did things intentionally to model that behavior. And so we have to be who we want other people, to bring them in, but also get to know them. And that's hard because, I think in the political climate, the last few years has been difficult. And so to get to know people and kind of put that to the side, we have to do that. We have to start small. So that's my suggestion is do neighbor to neighbor, get to know your neighbors.
And so Hannah, would you like to add anything from a faith-based approach?
Yeah, I was thinking about getting to know your neighbor is absolutely essential and so hard. So I was thinking to myself, and what can help with that is who are you talking to build up resources for this, your own sustenance. So do you have friends or coworkers or anyone who is also trying to contribute that you can have honest conversations with when things are really hard? Do you have the people in your corner so that when you are putting out an effort and you fall on your face, you can talk to them later? Like when you have written your name wrong with the wrong hand and you're embarrassed, is someone loving you through that? Because these things are hard. And it's not about echo chambers. It's not saying do you have people that are going to always just agree with you, but are there people that you can push together forward with, so that you have the I now have the energy to reach out to people and have hard conversations, because I've had some other work somewhere else. And I do think it takes a lot of, there's just so many layers to this. So like, for me, my DEI work is happening at church for me spiritually. It's happening in the therapy room with my counselor because I have stuff to unlearn from being a white person in this country. Like it has all of these things. It's got my spouse involved. It's got my friends involved. Like it is just lifelong, like, and pervasive for all the things. So that can feel really overwhelming, or it can feel like a gift to say, okay, take a deep breath. This is just a whole thing. Like we all have anxieties to work through. We have fear to work through. When I understand that about myself, I then understand it about the other people that are making me irritated or angry or are lashing out at me. Because if I know I have my own baggage, then they do too. And we're all trying to figure out how to move forward. So if I can heal myself and find healing with my people, then maybe we can start to heal together without a finish line. Like it's just going to be, we're just continuously trying to heal ourselves and the world. Be the change you want to see in the world. But there's a lot to that.
All right, well, thank you. And then we have our last question. So as you all are looking at the world around you, what gives you hope for the future of diversity in our community? And Maegan, we'll start with you. You look like you're ready to go.
That is such a big question. This is going to be such a, philosophical answer to start. What gives me hope is that I'm still around. What gives me hope is that my institution said that this role is important and I'm here. So that gives me hope. What gives me hope is that my president meets with me every month to find out what are the students saying, are we meeting their needs, how can we be better for them? Those are the things that give me hope that people get it. And just, I know I'm answering this question, but just to backpedal really quickly, because I really want to say something about what Hannah said. Someone told me this, and it was profound, that people can only meet you as far as they've met themselves. Absolutely. So if you don't even know yourself or why you think the way you think, it's very difficult for you to take on this thing about DE&I. So maybe that should be the first step, like Hannah said. Ask yourself your question, what are my biases? What are things that, why is it that I clutch my purse if I see a specific person? Why is it that I feel this way about the gays, or the things that people say, why is it that I think this way? And maybe stop there. And then the second step would be now to do the research, read it up. There's so much. We have never been in a society, in a world where information is literally at our feet. And it's not the role of people to just educate you. Like you can do it yourself. Read a book. We went to school where we had to learn about Pythagoras' theorem that I've never had to use in my life, but I had to do it. So you do that work yourself and learn about these things. And then thirdly, reach out. What's around you in the community? So you know that Franklin College exists. You know that we have a Center for Diversity and Inclusion. Get on our mail list, get on the website, see what events are open to the community, reach out. Hey, I own a business and I would love for you to come and do a training with my workers. Hey, I would love to create opportunities for volunteering with your students to come into the community so that they can see that they're welcomed here. And it's going to start little by little by little by little. But again, doing the work, and it's not easy, but it's so worth it, right? And then I know I can come across very, philosophical and fluffy, like Hannah said, but we're also businesses, right? And the bottom line is, statistically speaking, by 2050, 48% of America will be diverse. So whether or not diversity is coming, okay? And so are you going to be ready? Are you going to be prepared to receive this new burgeoning diverse people? And so from the bottom line perspective, you got to get on board because it's happening. Okay, that's it. Sorry.
Thank you. Would anybody else like to add anything before I pass it back to Kelly? All right, well, Kelly, thank you so much for letting me host this. I'll pass it over to you for the Q&A session.
Thanks, O, and thank you to everybody on the panel. This has been a really great discussion so far. We want to open it up to those of you who are on the call with us If you'd like to ask any questions of anybody, you can go ahead and put those in the chat, and then I can read those off, and we can just do a short Q&A here as we wrap up this evening. I did see a question a little earlier about, is there a way to woo a community to greater DEI readiness? Would anybody like to take that one on or have any ideas about that?
I want to say something about that. I don't know that this is how, like, exhaustively how you woo, but one of the other Spirit and Place events we've got going on this week is our Interfaith Understanding Through the Art of Poetry event on Thursday at Franklin College. And the whole idea behind that was, okay, maybe instead of lecturing about diversity, maybe we let performers just perform their art. And if we connect around art, then maybe like that's the humanity piece and the other stuff could come. And the poets that are coming in were chosen explicitly because Sikhism is a growing religion in our county, like that we know that this diversity is growing. So one of our poets is from a Sikh background. And so I wonder about those creative pieces of how do we get just humans together being human. And then you do have to learn more. So as Teresa was saying before, like people could have lots of thoughts about her and her partner until they meet them. And then they're like, oh, you'd like wash dishes and stuff after dinner? Like, okay. So how do we have those encounters? And for one opportunity that keeps coming to my mind would be Thursday, join us again for more art and excitement. Like, that is one of the ways that we woo people, is just through humanity.
I'd like to jump on that too, to say the leadership in Johnson County has to be on board with this. So I think wooing them means that we have to really let our voices be heard with our leaders to say, hey, you know, what are you doing to make sure that we're ready for diversity in our county? And I think that we see pockets. I mean, we have Franklin College, which, wow, that's so wonderful. I mean, you know, I love that. I mean, UND's not in Johnson County, but UND is doing a heck of a great job with that. But I do think that the community leaders, business leaders, you know, just everybody, you know, like Dr. Dunkel, you know, just to get on board to say, hey, you know, we want Johnson County, we want people, no matter what they're, who they are, what they are, whatever, to feel really good about living here and coming here, feel safe, feel like they're going to have their needs met, they're going to be valued as a community member. I think we need to get our leaders in the community. We have to start making sure we're being very, and this is me not talking, not JMH, okay? Just, I think yeah, you know, they know me as a social worker, so I was like, yeah, that's Teresa. But, you know, I just think it's so important that we get our voices heard so that the community leaders are putting goals in place for our community and for this county to make sure we're ready for diversity. And then that will bring people on too, because again, they're going to model, they should model what they want to see in their constituents, you know, so they need to be saying these things about diversity, equity, and inclusion and talking about it, and also having people on their staff and making sure there's all the different foundations for folks, you know, that come into the county. So that's my thought.
I love that, Teresa. I just also, you said looking at the staff, that's a huge thing that I also talk about. Who are you promoting? Looking at your business, who gets promotion, who gets a voice at the table? To answer the question though, I think, you know, obviously I believe more in the humanistic benefits of things, of diversity, equity, and inclusion, but sometimes people are not there yet, and you have to hit them with their pockets. And sometimes you have to let them know, like, listen, statistically speaking, more salsa is sold than ketchup in this country. More tortillas are sold than bread in this country. So diversity is already here, like Hannah said, and those are the things. So if you don't include these people, it will affect your bottom line, right? And so maybe sometimes that could be an approach, mixing it in, like you should value people because we're human and we are different and it makes us better. We're more productive. We think better when we're different and there are multiple perspectives in the room. But also, my friends, it will affect your bottom line as well. Just changing reference for 5 seconds. I made a presentation in my home country because there was this huge study that was done by excluding the LGBTQIA community in the Caribbean region. We are losing $4.6 billion every year. And I mean, that's the Caribbean region. And you hear about all these songs and they're quite homophobic. And I'm sorry on behalf of the Caribbean region, but you know, that is a thing. So now bringing it back to America, how much money are we losing statistically just by excluding people as well? So just putting that out there from, sometimes people need to see it that way for them then to get to the actual humanistic caring part. So that's my answer.
Can I comment on something Teresa said real quick? I do think, so panels like these are tricky because we need to make sure that there are diverse voices in a panel, and yet that means that our like highest ranking community leaders who are all white men are not in this panel. So there's nuanced reasons for that, but I also would be remiss not to say, since we've all been saying who's in the room and who's not in the room, who's in this room and who's not in this room. And you don't have to be on the panel to be in the room. Like, you don't have to be the one speaking to be in the room, listening and learning and trying to engage in these things. So I do think that this is ongoing work and questions, and it's not, I don't raise that out of bad faith. It's just to say we do still have work to do and conversations to have in different places to make the kind of community that we want.
All right, we have another question. Are there any DEI programs or webinars that any of you on the panel have participated in that would be helpful for those who are attending in being the gatekeepers in our respective organizations? Anything that you've come across, maybe in a TED Talk or just seen that you could share?
There's so many videos on YouTube, I'll tell you that. And I think for me, maybe that's something I should create. Who knows? I can't necessarily think of something off the top of my head other than the intentional work that I did to read books. You know what I mean? I can't think of something that's just offered for free like that other than the internet and articles. And we could potentially create a list of things if you'd like, because it exists out there. But to say like a program, I don't know a program right now. But like I said, the information is out there. And I'll be happy to share some resources if anybody would like.
And I would also add, sorry, just going back to what was stated earlier during the panel discussion, like finding someone that you're close to, finding someone that you're slightly comfortable with, and hearing their stories and taking the time to listen to their experiences has been the most rewarding way to learn about situations that you may or may not be able to relate to. Because even though you've probably been through the same situation, doesn't mean you all took it the same. So look at your inner circle. And if you are still questioning, like, wait, I needed an answer to this, that may mean that you need to expand your inner circle. And then I'll pass it over to Hannah.
Oh, I was just going to say real quick, one of my favorite books to recommend for this would be, well, specifically about race, would be Me and White Supremacy, because it is a 28-day guided journal that is both, it introduces some of the big topics and then pulls it back into your life to help you reflect on particularly people who identify or pass as white, in this country. It's giving big topics, and then here's how it might connect to your life, and letting you wrestle with the both, that it's systemic and individual together. So that's a great one to do with friends, with a church group, with a, pull some trusted people together to talk it out. But it's good.
Okay, we've got a couple more minutes left for questions. Does anybody else have anything they'd like to drop in the chat? I did share some resources that the library has put together. We have lots of book lists on our website, as well as information about our panelists. And we are recording this, so I will send that link out whenever I send out the survey after we get it put up on YouTube. So.
And then Kelly, I did see a question earlier just asking if diversity, equity, and inclusion work has to live in HR, or can it live somewhere else? So I don't know if the panelists wanted to touch on that.
I would say it should live in multiple places. So it has to live in HR to protect folks that should be protected. Like there should be some level of HR stuff that keeps people treated well and fairly and all of that. But HR is also not just to treat, or not just to protect employees, but HR also protects institutions. So it can't just live at the institution level, because institutions move slowly sometimes and reflect our own like individual collective values and ideas. So I would hope that it lives in multiple places. It lives individually, it lives in HR, it lives in different offices and committees that are all trying to bring different perspectives to it, so that you get the rich, like, here's the heart level stuff, here's the business level stuff. Like we have different expertises and values that could pull it together. So yes to HR, and everywhere.
I would tend to say that the more that we're able to educate, bring awareness and understanding, and just that perspective to bring our communities together, the less HR will have to be involved in those areas. So the less things that come to, their work in those departments.
Not to add to the question, because I agree with my colleagues, I just wanted to say that I had put an implicit bias free resource, because that's a great place to start. What are implicit biases? What are some things that we're biased about that we just don't know? And so that they have a host of different ways that you can be biased. And so that's a free resource if you'd like to start the work.
All right, well, that looks like all the questions that we have. Let's give everybody a virtual round of applause. And it's been a really great evening learning from all of you, and also learning how your organizations are working to create positive change here in Johnson County.